A PhD Viva, which is also known as a thesis defense or oral examination, is an assessment conducted to evaluate a PhD student's research and their written thesis. Reaching this moment is a significant milestone for any student who has been working towards obtaining a PhD degree. Viva is short for viva voce, which is Latin for by live voice, and this reflects the oral nature of the exam. During the Viva, a PhD student presents and defends their research in front of a panel of examiners who are experts in the same field as the one the student has been studying in. The examiners assess the PhD student's understanding of the research topic, their ability to defend the decisions they made throughout the research, and also the originality and quality of their work, because a PhD research has to be unique and novel. I recently passed my PhD Viva, and in this video I am going to share my personal Viva experience whilst it's still fresh in my mind. Preparing for a Viva is a nerve-wracking experience because you spend years of your life researching your PhD and go through the nightmare that is writing your thesis. And it comes down to the final battle, which is the Viva, which either renders years of your life, which you've spent researching your PhD, worth something because you passed the Viva, or they are rendered worth less because you failed the damn Viva. Because of this, the pressure is extremely high to show up on the day and perform as required, because it's a make or break moment. Because the Viva is basically 100% of the score for your entire research. There's no way out of it. Either you show up on the day and get it done, or you fail. I don't think anyone wants to spend years of their life studying something only to fail at the final hurdle. So, like I said, the pressure is high. My Viva took place at the end of June. So at the beginning of June, I basically started dedicating a significant amount of my time to rereading my thesis, which is like 200 pages long. And I wanted to pretty much make sure I knew every single detail I had written in that document, because all of the questions the examiners would be throwing at me would literally be coming from the thesis. The entire Viva is based on what you wrote in the thesis, them questioning it, maybe coming up with discussions around it. So I had to make sure I remembered everything in that 200-page document, so I was ready for any question they might throw at me. I also took part in a mock Viva, which was arranged by my supervisor, so that I would get a taste of how the actual Viva may play out. I was going to make a separate video to kind of talk about my mock Viva experience, but honestly, I'm just going to talk about it in this video and do a comparison between the mock Viva and the actual Viva, and I'll do that in a moment within this video. The mock Viva helped me to prepare thorough and concise answers to questions that the examiners may throw at me, and it mostly helped me to prepare for the very first question, which is the most important question that will be asked by the examiners in the Viva, because that sets the tone of the entire proceedings, essentially. Because if you answer it well, then that sets a good positive tone for the rest of the proceedings. If you answer it badly, it sets a negative tone for the proceedings of the Viva, because as far as the examiners are concerned, this is how they can tell if you truly know and understand your research, by being able to answer this first question. And that question is, it's a very simple question, by the way. You'll be thinking, how can you struggle to answer this question? But that question is, please provide us with a brief overview of your research, the motivations behind it, the outcomes that came from it, and how your research contributes to the knowledge base for your chosen field. Yeah, I know. It's a very simple question. And, if you spent 6 years studying, you should be ready for this. But remember, you'll be nervous, freaking out a little bit, because this is it. It's D-Day. So, yeah, it can go sideways. Believe me, it can go sideways. And I'll be honest with you, I messed up this question in the mock Viva, right? Because I answered one way, and they were like, yeah, no, you can't answer it that way because I answered in too basic a way. I had to answer it in a more salesy way, like as they call it abstraction, but you're basically selling your research to the examiners. So you have to answer it in a certain way to really bring out the benefits your research has to both the academic world and the general public, so society. So it's quite almost a sales pitch of your research, if you will. So yeah, but I'll talk about that more in a bit. So on the day of my Viva, was in the morning at 10 a.m. So I woke up early. I was feeling confident, ready for battle. I was ready. I took one last look at my preparation notes, and I had pretty much a pep talk phone call with my supervisor, just to ease off any last minute nerves that might creep up. As this is the day, right? It's D-Day, man. So I was ready. I got into that battle mode mindset because it's the final battle. I gotta walk in there with my game face on, and and then the proceedings started. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is my Viva happened online, on like Zoom, Teams kind of thing. Usually they happen in person, but since the pandemic and all that stuff, the university hasn't really rolled back to in-person Vivas. So it was online. Hey, I wasn't complaining. I was comfortable in my home, so it's all good. So yeah, I joined the phone call, camera on and everything. And in the meeting were the two examiners. One was internal to the university. The other one is external to the university. Apparently it's a rule. I'm not going to get into that. There was a meeting chair who, I don't really know what he did beyond just chair. He chaired the meeting. Who cares? And then my supervisor was there. Now, introductions were made. I introduced myself. The examiners introduced themselves. The meeting chair introduced himself as well. And then, obviously, my supervisor introduced herself. And then, I made some light jokes and light banter to just ease the tension, mostly for my own sake, because the nerves were starting to creep up again, because it's the moment, and I was trying to just keep them down. Like, this is not the moment. You're not going to ruin this for me, kind of thing. And once all the introductions and banter was done, the meeting chair and my supervisor pretty much went silent, and then things kind of kicked off. Now, remember the first question I spoke about that I messed up in the mock Viva? Yeah, that same first question, the simple one. The examiners asked that question. I was ready for it. At least I thought I was ready for it, I should say. But I still actually laugh when I think about this now. Anyway, let me get back into this. When they started asking the question, right, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm ready for you. The moment they finished asking the question, my brain went blank, and I forgot the entire response I had practiced for that first question, because I knew I had to nail that question, and if I don't nail it, this whole show might just go sideways on me, and my brain goes blank. Can you imagine the audacity? My own brain betrayed me in this moment and basically went, "You're on your own, buddy." It's such a crucial moment, man. Just unbelievable. Now, I started freaking out internally. Like, outside, I was cool. Remember, I gotta keep my game face on, because the Viva is not just about the topic of research. It's a mind game between you and the examiners. If they see you're rattled, oh man, they'll devour you. So it's a mind game. Right, so I had to keep my game face on, and also come up with a response quickly because they asked the question and I can't like keep quiet for too long. So I still knew the main points of the big hitting points of my response. It's just all the connecting words that made it sound like, like a lyrical response that's gorgeously put together, that's sexy basically. They were gone, and I just had to pretty much put some words in between to make this sound good and make it salesy essentially. And I formulated something coherent and good enough, and they accepted it, and then the Viva just proceeded. They seemed happy enough with it because of what comes next. But yeah, now I expected the entire PhD Viva to be a complete interrogation essentially, and I was prepared to play defense, like solid defense, as if I'm Chiellini in like the Eurofine or whatever, I can't remember, or like Ramos when he was breaking knees and stuff. I expect to be playing solid defense the entire time because I just expected that to be the case because it's called a thesis defense. So naturally speaking, I came in ready to play rock solid defense. However, I was surprised because the actual Viva itself wasn't an interrogation. It was actually more of a discussion, a very, really enjoyable discussion. I actually enjoyed it, to be fair. It was a really good discussion, and it was mostly around, in fact, the whole thing was around my research and the decisions I made and why I made those decisions and the direction I took in my in my research. And also, even the scoping, the scope of my research, why I chose that very scope and kind of, slimmed it down. And also I had to clarify a few points here and there as to why I did certain things. Because there were parts of my thesis that weren't, at least I thought they were well explained, but for the examiners, they didn't really get the message they didn't get the message I was trying to pass on in the thesis, so I had to clarify some points here and there, but it was all good. It's nothing major. Now the supervisors, imagine the examiners, when they did the Viva, at least for me, but it's been the same thing from other people I've spoken to in the who've done Vivas as well. They go through each chapter in your thesis and ask questions to formulate a discussion around and talk about stuff. And that was the same case for me. It was chapter by chapter. I think I had 8 chapters or something like that. So yeah, and all these discussions were at least 15 minutes long, if not longer. So I remember in my literature review chapter, they asked a question about why I chose neural networks instead of traditional machine learning models for my research, and I answered why, backed it up with the literature I'd read to justify my reasons, and then they were like, okay, that makes sense. And then they started a discussion around neural networks and how they work, trying to see how much I knew. And it was a dicey moment because I know a decent amount about neural networks and how they work because I have spent quite a considerable amount of time researching this stuff. However, I was concerned that the more the discussion went on, the more they'd expect nitty-gritty details about neural networks, which I did not have. So I mostly based all of my responses in this discussion on the research I'd done and pretty much just backed it up with that because, the literature I'd read and backed it up using that because I'm not the first person to use neural networks to classify text, so it was easy enough to back it up with that. And that was pretty good. And it went pretty smooth. Smoother than I expected, actually, because it kind of got dicey there with the neural network discussion, but it was all good. Now, the examiners also mentioned that they liked that I wrote about, in the thesis, I wrote about the experiments I did that failed and didn't shy away from it, which I was first surprised to hear them say because when I was writing the thesis, it was touch and go whether I'd include those in my thesis or not. And my supervisor told me to just add them in because they'll show progression. And she was right, honestly. She was 100% right. That woman is always right. I mean, I don't even know why I even questioned her at that moment. But anyway, the examiners literally said, it's good to see that you added all your failures, recorded them as failures, and then built on top of them or changed direction because of the results you found. And it's something they even stated that they expected from a PhD student, because I'm a novice researcher, right? I'm new to this whole game of academic research. So they expect a lot of mistakes and failures to be had, because even seasoned experts like themselves still have failures in their experiments and their research. So there's no way I'd go, yep, found the solution in the first try, guys. It's like, that's nonsense. So they really like that progression, and also the fact that I wrote about my failures also backed up and showed why I ended up with the final solution I developed that became sort of the centerpiece of my research, and sort of tied everything together, and they really liked that. So yeah, I was glad, because it could have gone, I wasn't sure how they take that. So I'm really happy with that outcome. Even though the examiners liked the fact that I recorded my failed experiments, showed progression, and all that good stuff, they did have some criticisms of my machine learning experiments, especially in relation to how I was doing machine learning comparisons as I was going through these experiments. And they didn't like some of the ways in which I was comparing them, which was a valid criticism, to be fair. I did explain why I did that way, because there was a reason why I did the comparisons in that manner, and they understood the reason, but I still, acknowledged that the criticism they had were valid. This is because even though Viva is technically a defense of your research and your PhD, essentially, you cannot stubbornly defend your research and the decisions you made without accepting some valid criticisms from the examiners, because you lose rapport with them, and you don't want that to happen. Now, I already mentioned earlier that a PhD Viva is a mind game between you and the examiners, in which the examiners have the upper hand because they have more experience in this whole academia world. But another way of looking at it is as a flirtatious dance between you and the examiners. Just roll with me, okay? Just roll with me. And as you're doing the Viva, you want to build rapport with them, where it's like you're vibing, essentially. That's the dance, right? You're in sync. And by acknowledging valid criticisms when they raise them, even if you have reasons why you made certain decisions in your research, as long as you acknowledge that they are right, that's you letting them, no, wait on, how do I say this? That's you making them feel good about their point of view on your research, as people are kind of coming in with fresh eyes, and it makes them feel heard and respected as the seasoned experts they are in the field. So you gain more than you lose by acknowledging, when they make valid criticisms, and just rolling with it. So it's in your best interest, actually. So yeah, when you're doing a PhD Viva, don't be stubborn about defending your research. You end up losing. Now, towards the end of the Viva, the examiners asked me, knowing what I know now, what would I do differently if they would take me back to my first or second year, right, studying this. And I remember making this joke. I was like, well, I'd still have a full head of hair, that's for sure, because, the hairline expired in year 3, I think. It is what it is. I'm over it now. I still have moments of, missing the hairline, but it is what it is. I think I'm rocking the bald look pretty well. So, not that I have a choice in the matter, but, you roll with it. But anyway, on a more serious note, I told them that I would have taken a sniper's approach to doing my research instead of a scattergun approach, which is what I did. So I would have more scoped down on a way forward and started trying to zone in on coming up with the best solution, instead of trying different things over the 4 years to see, which which strategy would work, which approach would work the best. And that's something I'd advise to anyone doing a PhD, assuming you're not already about to do your Viva. If you're still midway through your research and doing experiments, definitely utilize the sniper's approach. It would be far more efficient than a scattergun approach. Of course, you need the scattergun approach initially for maybe the first 2 years, but after that, really scope down and be quick about it. But yeah, that's my sage of wisdom on that one. Overall, my PhD Viva experience was a good one. It was a rigorous and intellectually stimulating experience. I remained calm the entire time because I had to keep the game face, you had to keep the game face on. And I pretty much just listened carefully to questions and then responded in well thought out and well supported responses, which is what all you can do for Viva, really. There's not much you can come up with because everything's based on your thesis. So as long as you're responding in a manner that supports your thesis, you're all good. That's all that matters. But yeah, it was a good one. It lasted about 2.5 hours, which apparently was a quick Viva. So hey, listen, when you're good, right? I'm just messing. But yeah, apparently some Vivas have gone for 5 hours. It's ridiculous. And honestly, the 2.5 hours that I was in there for, I thought we were in there for an hour and a half when they said, "Oh, we're done." And I was surprised because I was like, "Oh, I thought, we're just getting warmed up," but it was, 2.5 hours in. So yeah, good times. I only say that because I passed, obviously. Once the Viva was done, the examiners asked me to leave the phone call so they could deliberate and discuss, and then come up to a decision. So I dropped off the call, had a quick phone call with my supervisor where she told me I did well and that I was, I performed really well and I remained calm and, good responses. And then, it was just a waiting game to hear back in, I think 15 minutes. It was a 15-minute time span. I'm telling you guys, that woman, my supervisor, that woman is the reason I made it to the finishing line. Without her, I wouldn't have made it. She's a real G, that's for sure. Now, once the examiners were done deliberating, they reconvened, called me back into the Teams meeting, and told me that I passed the PhD, which was it was a moment. I can't even explain how I felt in that moment, but I felt a certain weight off my shoulders, stress levels just went whew. I was like, oh, thank God, man, I made it. They congratulated me on defending my research really well and on the contributions I've made to the research space. And then the next thing was by the way, I passed with minor corrections. So they started telling me about all the things I'll need to fix in my thesis before it gets the final submission. But, I still passed. Just need to fix those things and it's all good, before graduation. I have to tell you, when they said you passed, my brain shut down from hearing anything else they said. So when they talked about minor corrections, I didn't really hear what they said because in my mind, I was just saying, I passed. That's what I was screaming, yes, in my brain, basically. So I didn't actually hear what they said about the minor corrections, but that's okay because they send you a report essentially afterwards, which will detail what you need to fix, and the time frames and stuff, which I think is 3 months. So it's plenty of time. And what I need to fix will probably take 2 weeks. So it's not a big deal. Probably less than that. It's not a big deal. But yeah, I was so excited, but I had to stay calm, right? Because gotta keep a game face on. I'm still in the Viva technically, and I couldn't stop smiling though. I just couldn't stop smiling. It was ridiculous. But it was a good day, man. It was a good day. Now, I did mention earlier that I was going to do a comparison between my mock Viva and the actual Viva. So I'm going to cover it in this segment. So The similarities are kind of the setup. They're quite similar. The first question is the same. However, the mock Viva was a lot more intense. The mock examiners, who were different people to the ones who did the actual Viva, by the way, they were a bit more aggressive. I mean, they were interrogating me on my research. I mean, they wanted my head, basically. And it was quite jarring and kind of nerve-wracking, just the way they just come at you from like the moment the mock Viva starts. It was quite, not bizarre, but just like, whoa, okay, I'm really having to defend. It's crazy. And I remember there's this one question I was asked, which, yeah, it almost ended me, basically. I died inside when they asked that question. So the question was, in the mock Viva, by the way. The question was, I recently did a quick Google, found some papers that are done by researchers who are doing something similar to you. Now, you haven't cited these papers in your thesis, but it seems to me that the research you're claiming to be novel, new, and kind of innovative has already been done by someone else. What then makes your research relevant? Now, I hadn't read these papers that they brought up as evidence, and that's because these papers were written like as I was pretty much writing my thesis, so I didn't really see them, right? Because I was no longer focused on what's in the industry. I was focused on finishing my thesis. So they said that question, and I mean, I kept my game face on, because even though it's a mock Viva, it's still the same rules, right? But inside I was dying. I was like, God, you gotta be kidding me. Come on. I didn't have a response because it's the first time I'd heard about this and I wasn't ready. And I had to be honest, I was like, I can't answer this question without reading the literature, so I don't know how to respond. And they kind of broke character, because in the mock Viva, they'll ask you questions, the interrogation, you answer, and then they'll break character from the examiner role and then tell you how you did well in responding, how you did badly in responding. Because they're trying to help you out, right? They're not just interrogating you for the fun of it. They're trying to help you out and prepare you for the real thing. So they came out of character and told me, okay, you need to read these papers, find out what's in them, how that's different to yours, because I'm sure there's a difference. And then there has to be a difference, because it can't be the same as mine, because I already published papers on my research. So no one can copy it and do the same thing, because I already staked my claim on that. But they were like, you still need to come up with some justifiable answers in case one of the examiners brings this out, right? Because this could actually happen in the real thing, and you have to be prepared. Because you can't say I haven't read them, because that will be an instant fail. So that was, gracious of them. But wow, that question was just a curveball, man. It was ridiculously. I was like, are you kidding me right now? It was ridiculous. But I think that's the main difference. The mock Viva was more of an interrogation through and through, where they then give you points afterwards, after you fail to respond, obviously, or fail to defend, if you will, the attacks. Whereas the actual Viva was more of a discussion. It was not an interrogation, which is what I thought it would be. So it was actually more enjoyable than I thought it'd be. So, because I actually became less nervous in the actual Viva the more it went on, because I was like, okay, they really want to discuss things, They don't just want to throw rocks at my perfectly built castle. They don't want to destroy it. They just want to understand why I built it this way, which was cool. So yeah, that's the main difference. But for anyone doing a PhD, I urge you to do a mock Viva before the real Viva, because believe me, you do not want to walk into the actual Viva naked. And that's what you'd be doing if you walk in without doing a mock Viva. You are walking into that thing naked, and they will eat you alive because you ain't ready. I'm just telling you, you won't be ready. That mock Viva will make you ready. Upon reflection and looking back at the Viva experience, it was very rewarding, because it pushed me to think critically about my research, help me to strengthen and articulate my ideas and my research, and also help me to it helped me to come up with new ideas of how I could progress my research, which is really important. Go away. So yeah, it's a great thing. One last thing is, for anyone who's going to be doing their Viva soon, it's important to know that a Viva is not just about defending your research. It's also about engaging in scholarly discourse. I think that's the right word, and being part of a discussion that will help to add knowledge to the field that you're working in, and that's nothing but a good thing. So when you walk into the Viva, don't be too afraid, because it will be a dance where it's give and take, and it will be good. Anyway, that's it for the video, guys. Thank you for spending the time to watch this video, and the video where I shared my Viva experience. I hope to those who are studying PhDs or thinking about studying PhDs, this is helpful and will be of value to you. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next video. Signing out.